welcome to this final panel. I hope you are still full of energy. I am so grateful that I can be here. This is the most uplifting event of the entire year. I always look forward to the school meals coalition gatherings, and to have it in Brazil. What a wonderful country. Thank you, Brazil, for your leadership on so many areas. We are so grateful to be in this beautiful country. And thank you, of course, to the School Meals Coalition. We have said it before. I want to particularly give a shout out to the Secretariat, who have done an amazing job putting this together, to Carmen, to MJ, to the whole team that's here. Wow, we have benefited greatly. So now let's move to the financing. So exciting. I'm an economist. I love talking about finance. We're here to talk a little bit about the Sustainable Finance Initiative, but also more importantly about the experience that many of the countries on this panel have had with mobilizing the resources for this important issue. The Sustainable Finance Initiative has been in existence since 2022, and it has been working closely with governments, with international agencies, with development partners, research institutions, and others to generate actionable evidence, to provide technical assistance to countries, and to drive advocacy, to mobilize people around this issue. We've tried to put the financing issue on the agenda at national level, at global level, at regional level. And we've also supported countries as they are thinking through their strategies on financing. So over the past year, we've supported 13 countries to conduct fiscal space analysis, develop costing studies, and develop these strategies, these critical strategies to finance school meals. The Sustainable Finance Initiative has released a number of reports. I hope you will see them, or they are out there, but also online. Beautiful reports with a lot of evidence. We had our evidence session earlier. There's really good evidence about how to mobilize financing as well. So we've had a flagship report on innovative financing. We have technical papers also on debt swaps, climate finance, earmark taxes, and also recently we launched a paper on financing homegrown school meals. So what we'd like to do is really share this message, not here, but also in other venues. We've been at the annual meetings, the spring meetings, we've been at the Food Systems Summit. We need to be everywhere with our message. What we've seen is that there is a huge demand from countries for this work. Countries really are trying to figure out how to mobilize the funding and how to expand their programs. And we are really proud that we've also been able to work with the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty to really mobilize the financing plan behind the goal of reaching 150 million additional children. That was under, as you know, the alliance was an initiative of the Brazilian government under the G20. So we have helped actually inform that strategy with costing analysis and financing data. So all in all, what we are doing here is trying to come up with a menu of options. So how do countries think about not only different options to mobilize domestic finance, but also to see how they can engage development partners. And this, both on the domestic and the international side, we've looked at sin taxes, earmarked revenue, resource revenues, debt swaps, thematic bonds, climate finance, and so on. But I don't want to spend too much time going over this, because the most important thing is that we are going to hear about all of this from our wonderful countries and international partners here. And so we are going to listen to this wonderful panel, but before that, I want to introduce Mrs. Cristina Duarte, who has been a fearless leader on this front, energy abound, As you know, as was announced, she is the Undersecretary General and Special Advisor on Africa to the United Nations, and she will tell us, what do we do, Cristina? Over to you.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. All protocols observed. They told me that I have only 6 minutes, so all protocols observed. I'm going to jump straight to the question. How to get the money? This is the question. How to get the money? Reliable, domestically, and at speed. Allow me just to bring a couple of figures. This morning, Carmen mentioned that in Africa, in the past 2 years, Africa has been able to add 20 million children to the school feeding. Correct? Amazing, amazing, chapeau. But if we compare these 20 million with the 45 million children that reach the school age in Africa, the gap is huge. The gap is huge. It means that in the past 2 years, 90 million, in the same 2 years, 90 million has reached the school age, only 20 million have been covered. How to get the money? And to respond to that question, I will touch in 4 items very quickly. First, we need to understand Africa's financial landscape and Africa's finance paradox. Otherwise, all the solutions will be purely transactional, not transformative. Let's start with the financial landscape in Africa, and I will provide a couple of numbers if you allow me. A concrete country, I'm not saying the name of the country, allow me, but a concrete African country, these are the numbers. In 2023, that country, 77.5% means $2.2 billion of that country's health budget was funded through ODA. In the same year, 11.8%, $500 million of that country's education budget was funded through ODA. That same country, in 23, spent $28 billion in debt servicing, 60% of the budget. If we add, so no fiscal space to lend any transaction. I worked 10 years also in the banking industry. So if we add to that reality in terms of financial landscape, inefficient public spending in Africa, and we need to start talking these numbers in a very open way, allow me to provide 3 figures. Africa's initial public spending has been $78 billion annually, 12 billion in education, and 28 billion in health. So this is the financial landscape where you are trying to get money for school feeding. Second, how come this is the financial landscape? Then comes the second item of my intervention very quickly. This financial landscape has been shaped by Africa's finance paradox. In the past 60 years, Africa has been captured by this finance paradox very quickly. Africa loses $500 billion, I can provide the breakdown, on an annual basis. Allow me to repeat the number, $500 billion. Africa loses $500 billion with our right hand and begs for $60 billion on ODA. This is a paradox. If we don't address this, we will not get money for, let's say, for school feeding. What is the reason behind this? The root cause. Weak control of economic and financial flows. This is the reason we lose $500 billion. This erodes buffers, raises risk premium, channels revenues in cost of debt service, crowding out human capital investment. Everybody knows this negative, let's say, chain. Again, the $1 billion question. In this financial landscape, how to get money for homegrown school feeding. First, and I have been saying, we need to change our mindsets. It's not a transactional challenge. Transaction will come in the value chain. It's a mindset challenge. We need to, in the case of Africa, we need to move from managing poverty to manage development. So we stop losing money. Third issue that I'd like to bring to this conversation. What is the roadmap to get the money? What is the roadmap? And we have been advancing, let's say, this proposal. Step one, I believe in this room we have African policymakers and you have donors, our partners. Step one, between 26 and 2030, let's earmark 25% of ODA to school feeding. Second, within this 25% earmarked to ADA, within that, let's allocate 25% to help African countries to build strong domestic resource mobilization so they start control their budget flows. Basically, turn pilots in the policy and promise into cash flow. Fourth, once you build strong domestic resource mobilization beyond tax revenues, we have a strong country system. Then debt swaps can land. Then debt swaps can land in a transformational way, not in a transactional way. What I mean by that? If you organize a debt swap for, let's take the 28 billion, and we take the 28 billion, instead of paying the debt, we just channel to school feeding. And when it finishes, what we do? When you put the 28 billion in school feeding, what we do? We go back to the starting point. The idea is to use the debt swap, the 28 billion. Out of this 28 billion, let's earmark 25%, okay, for school feeding, and help the country build a strong DRM system. Why? To build capacity, to build a country system, so in 5 years, the country takes over the school feeding problem, the national budget. Let me bring the example of Cape Verde, very quickly. We start school feeding in 1979. In 2010, WFP came to my office and said, Minister of Finance, is over. The game is over. We'll be stop financing Cape Verde school feeding in the next budget cycle. In 2011, the 100% school feeding was financed by the budget. I had to gather every penny. But there were, in that case, there were resources. Why I have been able to do so? Because in the past 5 years, I stopped all the leakage on the expenditure side of the budget. So in terms of, let's say, in terms of losing money. My final three key message. First, homegrown school feeding is more than a hot meal. Carmen said this morning. In my case, I was Minister of Finance for 10 years. As Minister of Finance, for me, was a macroeconomic tool. There are all the benefits that you mentioned, nutrition, gender parity, school ratings, yes. But for me, was a macroeconomic tool. Was the best macroeconomic tool for me to deal with the 2008 international subprime crisis, the school feeding program. Why I say so? When procurement is designed for smallholders, public spending becomes local demand. When payments are made on time, they become bankable cash flows. When menus, as Brazil just showed, values fresh and fortified foods, it becomes better learning and productivity. This is how school feeding connects national demand to national supply, transforming food systems. My second message, if you allow me, my key message, to be transformative, aid must do more than deliver outcomes. It must also foster national-led and people-centered institutions that can deliver effectively, equitable, and accountability. Third key message, rebuilding trust requires enable states to lead. Western Africa, what you are experiencing in Western Africa, the erosion of state legitimacy as a result of the absence of the state. School feeding can be a source of trust. School feeding can be a source of social cohesion. At the end of the day, school feeding can help build or rebuild state legitimacy. Of course, to unlock my fourth key message, to unlock resources at scale with the all governance approach. We just had a conversation with my dear sister of Minister of São Tomé. We need to shift from short-term projects to medium long-term policy planning, because school feeding is beyond the electoral cycle. I'm sorry to disappoint you. From external dependence to domestic resource mobilization, from ad hoc programs to standards, digital procurement, and transparent suppliers lists and guaranteed payment cycles. This is the only way we create a strong institutional environment to get as much value as possible from debt swaps. Because if you call bankers to structure your debt swap for debt servicing, they will structure only on a transactional way, not on a transformation way. Thank you, Liesbet.
Wow. Woo. So, this little plate of food is building nations. That is a wonderful message to start with. And I will now move to my panel that will talk about domestic finance, because the first part of our panel here will be around how countries mobilize resources domestically, the domestic first, and then the second part will focus on the role of international partners. So first of all, I'd like to ask our wonderful colleague from Benin to tell us a little bit about Benin's approach to pursuing a domestic first approach on school meals. Your country has pioneered innovative financing mechanisms such as the SDG bonds to finance the program, and you are now also working with the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty to coordinate development partner support. Minister Salimane from Benin, how are you bringing these strands together? How are you bringing your agenda around domestic resource mobilization, financial innovation, and coordination of external support together to scale your national programs? Over to you, Minister.
Merci beaucoup. Et mesdames et messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen, I will speak to you about the school meal program in Benin. Before we speak about funding, I will share with you a global view, and then I will speak to you a little bit about funding. So I will speak of both these perspectives. The national program on school meals in Benin, which is an integrated program and was also created in 2017 after a multi-sectorial approach. We had a territory collective, a base community that's really is interested in this project. And since 2017, this program allows us to improve nutrition of our students in their schools, because in this program, we have monitoring of this children's health. We also improve the access, the retention as well, and also the performance of these students. So it's not only the physical part of it, but we also have the local economy that has improved a lot. 80% is actually purchased locally. Of everything that's used in the school meals is done locally in Benin. We had $23 million towards investment with this program, and this program impacts all the different ministries. And we have 7 communes there, and we see very good results in it. So we have 1,400,000 students that are fed through this program. We have international coverage of 75 to 80% in our country. With respect to the funding, I know we have the political will. It's one of the most important things. Should the government not decide, not make it possible for this option, starting with feeding, I think we're going to lose our goals. As we know in Africa, this is extremely important. A child that doesn't eat, is not fed, well, of course, is not going to perform well at school. So the political will is key. And from this political will, showed and apparently also has to be showcased to the partners. In 2025, for instance, our national budget that funds this project, this program, since 2017, we have brought $100 million only in 2025. Before we had something similar, and every year this increases a lot. So we see the government effort. We have already spoken about it. For instance, the mayors and city councils also created the tools to support the school cafeterias and canteens. And we need to know how much every commune has used in monies. With respect to the perspectives that we have, we see how we could carry on making progress. So we put together a bid, a legislation, which was sent to the national parliament. And you want our members of the parliament to vote and pass it, so we could have school meals on an ongoing fashion in our political plans. So this bid is already sent to the national parliament, and it has to take into consideration all the different aspects: taxation, improving the taxation, all other requirements have to be included in this law that's going to be launched. And with the state engagement, I believe the partners will not be as afraid. So it is something that we have worked on for the last 7 years. And we created an agency which is responsible for this, the National Nutrition and Feeding Agency. And we have a lot of partners there. We have the Dutch embassy there working with us that funds a lot of this programs in Islamic as well. Also funding to support this school meal programs with also $100 million. So we had a lot of other examples of people, institutions, and countries that are interested in this program, and this is multiplied every year. So these partners are interested because they see the state efforts, they see the national budgets, and we see the territory collective activities, and we managed to implement everything in the school meals programs. So we now have to think about the coverage of this program. We will need to be 100% coverage, made everything permanent via a piece of legislation. So we're going to be getting support from the different stakeholders in the field. So I believe if we win this, if we do so, we're going to develop a lot, because education is going to help a lot, and we need this in Benin.
Wow. That's really wonderful. The political will, the setting of a strategy, legislation, it all builds a foundation for the mobilization of resources and for bringing partners on board. Thank you very much, Minister. We are really inspired by your example. Now I will turn to Sao Tomé and Príncipe, to Minister Isabel Abreu. Thank you so much. We would like to hear a little more about how you are mobilizing innovative finance. You have been earmarking syntaxes for school meals alongside other diverse sources of funding. Can you share a little bit about the funding model and how, what lessons you've learned from this experience? And I would ask you all to keep to the 6 minutes so that we can also hear from everybody. Thank you so much.
Muito boa tarde a todas e todos presentes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Eu, primeiramente,
Initially, I would like to thank Brazil for hosting this event here, as well as all different partners that always collaborated with our countries, Tomé and Príncipe, with the implementation of the school meals program in our country. I would start with a little bit of a history about the transition from PAN for the creation of the PENASE. PENASE is the National Program of Health and School Meals. In 2000, we had this transition. In 2012 to 2015. In 2016, São Tomé took over wholly the PENASE funding in the whole of the country. It is a universal program. It meets all the children from preschool as well as primary education up to 9th grade. For São Tomé and Príncipe, it's the biggest social program because 1/4 of the population in our country is encompassed by and benefits from the school meals and reinforces food security. Speaking about the creation of public policies in PENASE, the PENASE creation, we had the creation of the role of school meal strategy, and then we have an innovative model for funding. We created new sources of funding based in a piece of legislation in 2023, which is direct transfers from the budget, the country's budget, that represent the main source of resources towards the sustainability of the program. We also created a tax of 2.5% on alcohol and tobacco consumption, making São Tomé one of the first countries in the world to send these taxes towards health and school meals. We also create 2.5% tax on cement and tons that were imported. And for contribution of the school meals, the meals will have a symbolical participation of $3.5 per child annually, but not in a compulsory character. It's not compulsory. It's only for those parents who are better off. We are now working on the debt swap program with Angola and some bilateral creditors with the intention of channeling the resources directly towards the sustainability of the school meals program, increasing its coverage and its quality. The coverage for all the basic education system, because we programmed up to 2030 to encompass all students up to ninth grade. In 2025, this year, during the discussion of the State General Budget Program with the Parliament, we managed to redimension 10% of the trip subsidies of all of the state budget towards PENAS. That's why we increased substantially the program's budget, which is the country's commitment. With respect to the good practices, Penazi and São Tomé is responsible for paying all the cooks, and the cooks are the ladies that will make the meals, the hot meals for our children. The state will pay the salaries, people that work at the gardens as well, and the school cafeteria managers. With the support of different partners in São Tomé, we managed to have the deployment of a small chicken nursery that we managed to provide chicken and eggs for some crash schools. We also have pork that we can provide pork meal in one district to improve nutrition, and we want to increase protein in the school meals. Our infrastructures for storage and seeds distribution. Now we are engaged with the purchase of local products, and we've been working with children to consume more the local products as a way to have a better dynamics in our economy that will generate job opportunities and improvements of the income for the family agriculture. Our goal is to expand gradually to all the different levels, from the first cycle all the way to the second cycle and the secondary schools as well. We have some international partners that support our country, São Tomé and Príncipe, with the rice importation that comes from China and Japan, which is a donation, and São Tomé will offer rice to all the different schools, which is used through whole the school academic year. And we also have a project, a pilot project with the Center of Excellence with resilient social technologies to the climate change. We also have the support of in-person capacity building to our dietitians in our program. With all this, I'd like to conclude by saying that São Tomé and Príncipe shows that it is so possible to put together a robust, sustainable financial model for school meals. We just have to match domestic resources, fiscal innovation, and having the international cooperation as well. We want to invest in school meals, because invested in this sector, we're going to be investing in human development, education, and the future in the country. We still have some challenges, and these challenges such as improving our kitchens, because our kitchens are very old ones, old-fashioned, they've been degraded, and with respect to the environmental protection, we want to reduce the consumption of wood for the fire, and without this drastic consumption of wood, we can contribute towards the improvement of health of our cooks. Thank you very much for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. So much creativity. I love it. Your work actually on the sin taxes, on the alcohol and tobacco tax, has been an inspiration also for the Sustainable Finance Initiative to develop a toolkit on health taxes for school meals that also other countries can use and benefit from if they wish to consider this type of intervention. Now I will turn to Angola. Angola is an ambitious plan to launch in September 2025. We are here backed by 435 million in budget and a vision to reach 5.4 million children. That is amazing. Now tell us, how are you planning to finance this? What have you been thinking of?
Thank you very much, Brazil, for hosting us once again, and all the presents here, especially those who organized this second summit on school meals. For us, we have three main reasons that made us be very ambitious. We started to say that the first one is to fight school evasion. We have very high levels, especially between girls. The second reason was to fight this subnutrition and malnutrition rates in early childhood. And the third one is to fight the family poverty. Once Angola has a lot of households which are led by women, and the poverty there is female. So we had the need of fighting these three factors which are a great burden for the development of human capital in our country that we wanted to be developed. Based on this, we did comparative studies. Benin, visited Brazil as well, Ghana as well. We visited the experience in Ghana, and then we started what the others were doing. We did not reinvent the wheel, so we tried to adjust it to our reality and our context. And we had a meeting with the different sectors that work with the social area. That's why we had the important role of the Minister of Social Development. She's the one who subscribed our participation in this coalition, and we started thinking what were the mechanisms. We have a very big child population, and we couldn't at once feed all of them. But we also knew that the school meals that we were giving at the schools were not the most adequate ones. It was mainly based in highly processed products such as biscuits and juices and soft drinks, fizzy drinks, things that were not good for the children's health. And as we had these three factors, we tried to put the programs together, sponsored by the government, so that we could develop all this. So we put together the Ministry of Agriculture, controls family agriculture as well, and small co-ops based on former military personnel that are now working with agriculture. We calculated how much it would cost to feed one person in these poorer families, and based on local products from family agriculture. And once we got this value, we defined that this will be the initial per capita value for us to divide the population that we should start using the program of school meals. We presented to the government, we presented to the ministers that quickly accepted, and the presidents as well, so that in 2025, once it is included in the Ministry of Education budget, based in the country's development program, we have this value for the school meals program, abandon the practice of the old meal that we be given with the highly processed products. As it is mainly based in family agriculture practices, it's also a program of fostering family agriculture. What is going to increase the offer of these products. So once we have an abundance of the production of these foods, which are part of our food culture, it will be cheaper to be able to have the amounts so we can reach more and more children. It's a program that starts gradually. We're going to be prioritizing the preschool and primary school children between 3, 4, 5 years of age, all to 11 and 12 years of age will be our priorities. And up to 2027, see what we're going to be monitoring and assessing to see whether or not we're going to be able to carry on or if we should review our targets, which are very ambitious and daring. But we do not have any other way out. We have a social program for women, which is called Renda. It's a cash transfer to the families. So we're also encouraging the production of other products like the feeding of chicken for the eggs, also female goats because of the milk, and with these small incentives that the government gives, the mothers, because they are the ones that produce more and more. So acquiring these products in the field and being local products without having food from other latitudes, we managed to be able to have these amounts that the state can support. But this is what we can now, and up to now, it's only with funds from the Angola government that we're going to be feeding our children from 2025 with a different charisma. Therefore, we are aware of the challenges that we have facing us, and the program is also decentralized. The budget comes from education, but the application will go all the way to the municipalities. What the municipalities are now being mobilized so that they can also implement and add whatever is necessary to complement these meals. So what have we done?
Fizemos uma tabela nutricional dos produtos, colocamos
table of the local products,
como a batata doce,
such
a
as
mandioca,
sweet potato,
a
manioc,
cenoura, as couves,
squash,
as ramas todas que nós usamos
cauliflowers,
muitos vegetais.
carrots. We use a lot of vegetables. Fortunately, it's practiced in our culture, but many times they are not very well matched. That's why we have a lot of issues with malnutrition. And also doing education towards nutrition. Our main challenge is we do not have professionals that work with nutrition. So the challenge that we have, and we propose this concern to the great partner of PAN to see if we can train our cooks and dietitians so they can monitor our program and make sure that these levels were defined in the nutritional table, and if the menu that aims to match these necessary nutrients for the development of our children at the different states are being complied with, and then later on we'll be able to present it as a winner, or if we need to make an adjustment to improve what's necessary. We are aware there's a huge challenge, but we're not afraid of it, not afraid of the challenges. We do want, if in the future we can have support, okay, we are open. In the second phase, we'll be thinking, as São Tomé did, of mobilizing at the level of the companies social responsibility to sponsor some schools. This is the next step. Thank you very much.
I think you brought us all the way back to the beginning when Cristina talked about economic transformation and nation building. I think you're putting this in practice here with building this local economy. So thank you for this example. So we have 30 minutes left, I see here on my big screen, and we have 3 more panelists because we're now moving into the international arena. I hope we can leave a few minutes at the end to also hear from the audience. I have a few people who wanted to add their voice. So I would now like to move to this really important topic of the responsibility of international partners in this. How can this resource that comes from international community that is scarce these days, it is shrinking, how can it be catalytic, how can it be aligned with what the national priorities are and complementary to domestic resource mobilization, and as Cristina said, supportive of the domestic resource mobilization agenda. So we will explore here with our three distinguished speakers, starting actually with His Excellency Guirassy, the Minister of Education of Senegal, talking a little bit about the demand side of this international finance. Senegal is pioneering a $40 million co-financing model with the Islamic Development Bank and WFP's Nutritious Start. You're blending concessional finance and grant finance. But in addition to that, you are linking this to your own increase of your domestic resources. So, Mr. Minister, tell us how this mix of domestic resources and blended MDB and development partner finance supports Senegal's ambition to expand its school meals program. Over to you, Minister. I believe also you had been given 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. Merci au Brésil, merci Monsieur le Ministre, merci à tous les partenaires ici présents.
Thank you very much to all the participants for this wonderful initiative that allows each one of us in our country to learn with each other, to be in this program and follow them up as well, follow up our children as well. In Senegal, more and more, we're speaking about sovereignty. We know that things happened in Senegal in 2024. We have a huge comeback of our nation, and there was some ideologies that had to do with sovereignty and this issue of different levels. So when we speak of it, feeding is involved as well. And since last year, we have already increased and multiplied by 4 the budget used for school meals. We had a lot of different schools, so we increased the coverage in the country. Of course, we are away from Benin, but we're trying to increase the coverage. It's not 90% for sure. And in the subsector of school meals, we see that we have good quality food. We also have partners that monitor this quality. When we speak about the national policy, there are a lot of different aspects to be touched. And the new year finishes with the new strategic plan for the school meal plans. This is going to be from 25 to 30, and we are now working specific legislation that also has to do with Benin. The colleague spoke a little bit about this, and we want this law to come soon. You also mentioned this. We have different partners, IDB, PAN, but food security and sovereignty always comes back. So we need to rethink in our own economies. Our economies are very complicated. Our sectors are very vertical and do not speak to each other. For instance, with respect to agriculture, normally we always speak about the farmers, but in countries like Senegal, 60% of people are not in this area, for instance. We speak of the universities. People are not in these geographic parts of the country. So when we speak about food, we do not concentrate only in one space, one group. So we need to think about other ways to work of different social dynamics. thinking about the communities, thinking about the local schools, to dialogue together, and that we can make progress with these school systems. And this thing of school sovereignty is approached here. This is going to change a lot. Everybody who works with this logic of agricultural products, there is a market, right? It is a market of 60%. We also speak about the role of women. They have a very strong role here. So we need to focus women here. It's definitely going to change our relationship with feeding, because we have to think about women here as well. Agriculture, especially when we speak about school meals, thinking about the sovereignty, we go back speaking about the effects, colonialism, which is something bad. We have introduced a bad culture. Maize, for instance, corn. Corn, for instance, it was not in our tradition. We had a paince in the beginning, and now we had the long sugar chains, and all the nutritional aspects, we have a different aspect in children. And then, when we guide it to different cultures that we have, which are aimed at other countries, for instance, we sort of impoverish our own culture. So we need to diversify our agriculture and always recalling of our traditional crops and take into consideration what's good for the children. Schools need to be seen as opportunities. And in the National Ministry of Education visions, we always say how school brings all other spheres, all other fields. We can do a lot to improve our economic from school. We improve our agriculture. We need to make uniforms, so we help economy with this. We relaunch social economy. We also need to think about hygiene, as done with these projects. And what I wanted to launch to you, together with our international colleagues, is that we need to rationalize and harmonize and take into consideration everyone. So perhaps we have a lot of different interventions, such as UNICEF and PAN, and those who can intervene with goodwill. But finally, this is not going to have an impact in the system. We need to have something more impacting with what is really local. So I think it would be excellent. We need to think about people's needs, having performance indicators, follow up and monitor women in their performance, and connecting them to the educational system. Back when we follow up a certain category of population, we need to put them together to the educational system. So thank you very much for the initiative that you have had here. I believe we can have more of the stakeholders here. It's a great summit that allows us to bring all our goals in front of everybody here. And I'm speaking about the generosity that were granted to us to be here. So the African countries really need to count on this generosity. We shall not be successful should we not have a 15, 20 years projection, and that we break away with this cycle that really disturbs the school system and puts everything in risk. We always think about immediate things, and this is not good. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. You very eloquently expressed how it is so important to align with national goals and vision, the sovereignty of countries, and really the need for solidarity that's aligned with countries' goals. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. I will now turn to the IDB, to Marie Tamagnan. IDB has been a leader on this front as well. You've been a great partner to the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. The IDB pledged $25 billion to support this great initiative. My question to you is, what does it mean for this ambition here in this room around scaling school meals programs? How do you see that fit into that ambition? Over to you.
Thank you, Liesbet, and thank you very much to the School Meals Coalition for the invitation, and congratulations to the organizers for this fantastic event so far on this first day. So as Liesbet mentioned, last year at the Global Alliance launch, the IDB committed $25 billion to fight poverty and hunger. And so what does that look like practically today? We've introduced innovative balance sheet solutions to expand our lending capacity. These innovations allow us to mobilize additional resources for crucial investments, especially in the social sector: health, education, nutrition, social protection. And with these resources, we're supporting countries to address food insecurity, including but not limited to school feeding programs to reach millions of children across the Latin America and Caribbean region. So by the end of 2025, the IDB expects to have approved $4.1 billion in projects aligned with the Global Alliance. These are not just school feeding projects, but school feeding, of course, is a important pillar of the work that we do. But financial commitments are not enough. We're also providing technical expertise to ensure that every dollar is actually well spent. This includes, for example, impact evaluations on homegrown school feeding program, impacts on local economies. It includes regional studies to identify cost-efficient models in Peru, Guatemala. And Latin America and the Caribbean, as you all know, has a very strong history of pioneering school feeding programs. Many countries have developed innovative models linked to local agriculture. However, for these programs to really reach their full potential, we need greater and better spending. In 2024, regional investments in school meals reached $7.6 billion, but that only translates to 55% coverage of school-aged children. This forces difficult choices, either serving more students with less nutritious meals or serving children for fewer school days per year. And ultimately, it's the most remote and vulnerable children who often remain unreached due to the higher costs. So looking forward, Liesbet asked, what are the barriers? Many countries in the Latin America and Caribbean region face limited fiscal space and rising debts. And while the IDB has expanded its lending capacity, this does not automatically expand the borrowing capacity of countries. We're addressing this in a variety of ways. We're partnering with donors, partners. For example, in Haiti, a $44 million project includes a contribution of $15 million from the IDB and is coupled with contributions from the Global Partnership for Education, from the WFP, to ensure that we can feed 30,000 children per year for a number of years. Another barrier is implementation. Scaling requires strong coordination between ministries, sustainable supply chains, and effective monitoring systems. Without these, programs suffer waste and inefficiencies. So the main message that we have is that the solution moving forward is not just more funding, but smarter spending. We help governments strengthen coordination and cut waste to ensure that every dollar actually translates to a school meal for a child. We also know that equity issues persist. The most vulnerable children remain the hardest to reach. We're strengthening country systems for transparency and accountability to ensure that resources reach the most in need. For example, in Mexico, we're working with the DIF to modernize the school feeding information system using new modern technologies that will reduce errors and delays in the school feeding program. Institutional fragility also threatens long-term success. Many of my colleagues here have mentioned it. Programs need strong legal, fiscal, and political foundations. So we're working with the countries in the region to build reliance by embedding the school feeding programs into durable frameworks, into securing dedicated budget lines and stable funding sources. And it's important to note that in the region specifically, more than 99% of the school meals are financed by national and domestic budgets. So this is clearly a priority in the region. But beyond that, international commitments like the School Meals Coalition and the SDGs do create incentives for sustained support to these programs. So at the IDB, we are committed to doing more and to doing better. We're innovating to expand our financial capacity through a number of financial instruments, debt swaps, blended financing, partnerships. But we know that financing alone is not enough. So we're providing knowledge, evidence, and technical assistance to strengthen institutions and improve efficiency. This dual approach, mobilizing more resources while helping countries use those resources better, is how we will turn our financial commitments into real results for the children and families of Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful. So now I have my last speaker on the panel here, Mr. Hameleers from IFAD. IFAD's mandate is to invest in rural areas and people in rural areas. How is IFAD deploying its financing and technical assistance to help governments transform their food systems by strengthening linkages between rural people and school meals programs? Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, IFAD really does not have a lot of different mechanisms of financing. It's grants or loans. But nutrition has become more and more important in our portfolio. I remember 7 years ago, we started really introducing nutrition into our portfolio as an important factor. At the moment, we have 60% of our projects worldwide are now which we call nutritionally sensitive, which means that they have a focus on nutrition. So we're not only working on agricultural production, but also we want to try to influence diet, because the only way we see that a food system, including agriculture, works if it produces healthy foods, diverse foods. And that's what we focus on. So we're not financing directly school feeding programs, but what we do is we try to make them work. Improve diet variety, make sure there is local food available, educate people in diverse production. So what do we do in general? We work on policy, but mainly on local policy development, because I hear a lot of national policy, but if you don't push that through to the local level, it doesn't work. We work on knowledge, we work on innovation. So what do we do then in these projects? Policy. I came from Bangladesh. I was working in Bangladesh, and it was very difficult. Now I'm in Brazil, and it's completely turned around. So our role is completely different as an organization. But we still work with local partners, develop capacities. We still work a lot in schools, because we see schools not only as an area for feeding and education, but it also, what we have seen is, it improves diets in the households. And a personal experience in Bolivia, you can even use it to improve your farming system. For example, in quinoa, what we did, we trained teachers in ecological production. They trained children, and they took it home. And we generated two mechanisms. One, we had social control that they were really producing ecologically, and helped their parents in producing. So there is a two-way effect. But our main focus still is on trying to get our small farmers to produce for school feeding programs. And that means diverse small volume production, some transformation, and making sure that the product is there on the right moment. The biggest problem with a cow is you can't switch it off. No? But school feeding is only 10 months a year.
Yep. Thank you.
The main difficulties we have still in our programs is ministries of agriculture. We design projects with ministries of agriculture, and then we have to convince them to put a nutrition component in it. Procurement systems. I remember in Peru, if you wanted to supply potatoes to the school feeding program, you needed a specific truck for it. We did nothing else. Kids' choices. Kids already eat potatoes because that's from their garden. They want the new stuff, and I think that's something we need. If we recently have heard that we have now more overweight people than we have people really which are under fat, I think that's a big effect we're going to have, especially in Latin America. All our gains we make, we will invest in health.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right. I'm going to stand up now because I want you to stay awake because we have a very important speaker at the very end, a country that has been at the very foundations of this coalition. So I want to make sure we are all awake and we are all paying attention. I will ask for 3 very quick interventions. And by quick, I mean, can you keep it between 60 and 90 seconds? So, because we have a timeline, we have to get to the cultural event, we have to pay respect to what our Brazilian hosts are putting together for us. So, I will now ask Somalia to say a quick word. I will stay here.
Thank you, Dr. Liz. For Somalia, we are one of the countries that are trying to engage in debt swaps with one of our creditors. So at the International Conference on Financing for Development, there was the Global Hub for Debt Swaps for Development was launched. So my question is, how will the School Meals Coalition, through its Sustainable Financing Initiative, plug into the hub to promote debt swaps for school meals, and how can member countries can exchange experiences on debt swaps? Thank you.
Thank you. And this is really at the heart of the work of the Sustainable Finance Initiative. So I will ask Amy Bellinger to come and give you the answer to that question, but please contact the Sustainable Finance Initiative to help with this particular question of debt swaps. This is one of the areas we are working on. So, Guatemala, where is the, I thought we were going to have an intervention from Guatemala. Yes, there we are. Question or comment, but 90 seconds maximum.
Yeah. Bueno, hola. Qué gusto estar acá. Debo
It's a pleasure to be here. I have to say from Guatemala that the most important aspect of this school meal program is based on country legislation. It's not the Ministry of Education, it's Ministry of Education. Certainly they coordinate and execute the program, but we have a coordination of different departments, state secretariats that articulate together. We have here the Ministry of Agriculture that has a direct participation from this ministry in a very important aspect that has to do with articulating the local production of food and different type of fruits, vegetables, and meats with the school meals program. And I believe this is a very important element. Guatemala has a long history of trying to have school meals programs, and we have a very solid program since 2017. So we have an investment of $160 million to more than 400 million that we believe we're going to have soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Parabéns.
much. And I have a final comment here from colleague from SNV.
Thank you so much. I'm Simon O'Connell, the CEO of SNV. I put my notes away, Liesbet, so I'll be as brief as I can. Undersecretary General Duarte, Cristina, I wanted to build on your point around how do we get the money, but how do we get the right form of money? At SNV, we're working on kind of big blended finance initiatives within something called the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development, which is mobilizing ticket sizes, investment money of around 15 million euro, shrimp in the mangroves of Vietnam, or saline-resistant rice in Bangladesh, solar cooling of horticultural produce in Kenya, and then we're doing a ton of the grant-based work around results-based financing with small and medium enterprises in the 25 or so countries where we work. That's contributing with a company called Pearl Dairy in Uganda to 1 million children getting improved access to nutrition products. It's contributing to more regenerative agriculture and productive use of renewable energy initiatives in many of the countries where we work, particularly East Africa. But we're not bridging the gap between the grant monies and the investment money adequately enough. We're not doing enough along the impact capital continuum. So my aha moment earlier today was, but wow, as Mariana Mazzucato, I think, said this morning, or maybe last night, I'm losing track of time, it's about market shaping. And if we put schools at the center of those markets, we underwrite the risks for investors, we create more of a predictable guarantee for off-takers, and therefore we can bring down the price of that financing, and then we can move beyond the ongoing kind of grant to grant to grant structures at a time when official development assistance money is so constrained, and start to catalyze in that investment money. So that's my aha. Fabulous panel. Thank you for indulging me, Liesbet.
Well, thank you so much. We are extremely grateful to our panel here, and I see the MC waiting in the wings to announce the next speaker for whom we are all looking forward. I remember the first meeting of this coalition in Finland, and it was wonderful. So thank you so much, panelists. I enjoyed so much your contributions. Do we stay on stage? We will stay here. You can stay here. But I want to thank you. It was wonderful to hear your contributions, and thank you to the audience for listening. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Liesbet. Please, a round of applause for her. A big round of applause for her. Moderation par excellence. And it was a wonderful panel. When we are talking money and how we can get more money and how we can do it well, it's always very interesting because that's where we then put things in order. So, moving on very quickly then, as Liesbet just mentioned, it is my pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Viel Tavio, Minister for Foreign Trade and Development of Finland, and one of the co-chairs of the School Meals Coalition, to deliver the closing remarks for this session. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Liesbet Ster. And thank you to all speakers and participants for rich and forward-looking discussion. We have heard powerful examples today, from Benin's SDG bond issuance to Sao Tomé's syntax legislation, from Paraguay's hydroelectric revenue model to Angola's $435 million domestic investment. Senegal's five-fold increase in school meal funding and its innovative co-financing model with WFP and multilateral development banks shows how domestic resources and blended finance can reinforce each other. Sierra Leone's Partnership Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany and the Sustainable Financing Initiative is helping build a robust framework for climate-smart, homegrown school feeding. I want to acknowledge the leadership in this room. It's clear the momentum is now. Solutions are emerging, and the will to act is now stronger than ever. School meals are not just national programs anymore, they are a global movement. In recent years, we've witnessed unprecedented cooperation. Mechanisms like the School Meals Coalition and the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty have brought countries together, locally, nationally, regionally, and globally. We are sharing solutions and scaling impact. This marks a pivotal shift from donor-led, external funded programs to nationally prioritized and globally scaled policies. This session has delivered on its promise. We leave with many results. Governments inspired to make school meals a fiscal priority, learning from the examples shared. A clearer understanding of the diverse financing options available, from earmarked taxes to SDG bonds and natural resource revenues. Development partners better attuned to the financing ambitions and support needs of governments, especially those on the path to sustainability. A powerful announcement that is the launch of SFI 2.0, expanding the Sustainable Financing Initiative support from strategy development to implementation with new tools like the Syntax Toolkit. And a shared recognition that school meals are not just a social program. They are a cross-sectoral solution for education, nutrition, climate adaptation, and food system transformation. Finland's own experience reinforces this. For over 75 years, we've provided universal school meals, fully publicly funded. These meals are not just about food, they are about dignity, equality, and opportunity. And they are smart investments. We believe school meals must be positioned as strategic investment, one that delivers across multiple sectors and unlocks long-term development. Let us leave this session with renewed energy and a clear call to action. Governments make school meals a fiscal priority. Partners align financing with national strategies and leverage blended finance. All stakeholders recognize school meals as a public good that advances education, equity, health, climate resilience, and food system reform. Together, let's ensure that by 2030, every child receives a healthy, nutritious meal at the school. Thank you.